I was home. The silence in the house wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I sat in the kitchen, clutching a cup of coffee, my eyes drifting to the door of Ethan's room. That door, closed but present, was a reminder that he was here, under the same roof as me. After years of being away at college, seeing him back in the house felt surreal, comforting yet unsettling. At first, everything seemed normal. He talked about his classes, his plans for the future, and we settled into a familiar rhythm, sharing meals, watching movies, laughing at old memories. But gradually I started noticing the little things. His gaze. Yes, his gaze lingered a moment too long. It was subtle, but it carried weight. One evening, while I was cooking, Ethan joined me in the kitchen. "Let me help you," he said. His offer caught me off guard. I'd never been one for cooking. He clumsily chopped onions, his focus shifting to me every so often. At one point, his eyes met mine, and something in his expression made my heart race in a way it shouldn't have. I turned away quickly. "Be careful with the knife," I said, my voice higher pitched than usual. I brushed off the moment, blaming my imagination. But that night, as we flipped through old photo albums, the feeling crept back. Ethan picked up a picture, smiling at the memory, and then turned to me. "You know, Mom, there's no one like you," he said softly. My chest tightened. I told myself he was just being sentimental, nostalgic. But the look in his eyes told a different story, one that left me feeling unsettled. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was I overthinking? Maybe he was just adjusting to being back home, rediscovering the bond we'd always shared. But deep down, I knew this was different. The next day, the inevitable happened. Ethan approached me in the living room, his expression serious. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "I need to tell you something. I've been feeling something I shouldn't." His words hit me like a freight train. My breath caught, and my heart pounded in my chest. "Ethan," I whispered, shaking my head. "You don't mean that." "I do," he insisted, his voice trembling. "I know it's wrong, but I can't stop these feelings. I don't know what to do." I stood frozen, my thoughts swirling in a storm of disbelief and fear. "Ethan," I said finally, trying to steady my voice, "I am your mother. Whatever you're feeling, it's not real. It's just confusion, okay? This can't happen. It's not right." Tears welled in his eyes, and I felt a pang of sadness for him. For both of us. This wasn't a conversation I ever imagined having, but there we were, standing on the edge of a boundary that should never be crossed. We spent the rest of the day in uneasy silence. I avoided him, busying myself with chores. When night came, I thought I'd finally have a moment to breathe. But then I heard a knock on my bedroom door. "Mom," Ethan said softly. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. My instinct was to say no, to keep the distance I so desperately needed. But I knew we couldn't avoid this forever. "Come in," I said, sitting up in bed and pulling the covers around me like armor. He stepped inside, looking as lost as I felt. He sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I shouldn't have said anything. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." I nodded, searching for the right words. "Ethan, I know this is confusing," I said gently. "But what happened earlier, it can't happen again. We need boundaries. I'm your mother, and that's all I can ever be." He looked at me, pain etched across his face. "I know," he said, his voice barely audible. "But it's so hard. I've tried to push these feelings away, but they just keep coming back." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "We'll get through this," I said. "But you need help, Someone to talk to. Someone who can help you sort through these feelings. He nodded reluctantly, and for the first time that day, I saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. The next morning, I suggested he return to college and early. He didn't argue. As I watched him pack his bags, the weight of what had happened settled over me like a dark cloud. When he finally left, the house felt unbearably quiet. I sat on the couch, staring out the window, trying to make sense of it all. This wasn't something a parent ever prepares for. The bond between a mother and son is supposed to be simple, pure. But ours had become tangled in something neither of us understood. Days turned into weeks, and while the distance helped, it didn't erase the memories. I clung to the hope that time and professional guidance would heal whatever had gone wrong. Ethan is still my son, and I love him unconditionally. But now I understand that love sometimes requires setting firm boundaries and when it hurts.